Great. I'm already feeling more energy from the crowd today than yesterday, so kudos to you all. Maybe it's the lack of the heat, which I'm very happy about. Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
An absolute pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to the conversation. All right, so before we get into talking about Brompton, the icebreaker question that I ask every guest, can you tell us about a challenger brand that you're passionate about right now and why?
I would say right now, and I'm wearing them today, On Running. I come from sneaker world, so I used to work with Nike back in the day. And I remember the moment when Roger Federer came to Nike headquarters and said, guys, I'm stepping out, I'm going to work with this brand called On that no one had heard of, and Nike thought he was absolutely mad. And now look at it, 7 years later, it is the ascendant brand in sneakers, and the design is fantastic. I think they've really nailed the brand. I think it's a really tight brand story, and they are my sneakers of choice now.
Yeah, and I think they're also one of those brands that's like, they didn't just kind of initially disrupt effectively. There's a lot of brands that just kind of go against the category convention, they make a bit of a splash, and then they fade away or get acquired. They've actually kind of changed the category as it operates right now. They've had the incumbents actually have to adapt to them. I think at Tony's Chocolonely put them in the same bucket. And then also, it's a category where it's like, you didn't think there was space for another shoe brand. You know? Think of Blank Street Coffee here in London. I didn't think, or Watch House, I didn't think there was space for another coffee brand.
Well, Nike gave them the space by changing their entire operation, removing themselves from wholesale, going all in on D2C, which left all this space in the wholesale world for brands like Hoka and On and New Balance to move into.
Yeah.
And they've done it in style. And now Nike is struggling.
So before we get into talking about Brompton, I typically don't like, especially when we only have 20 minutes, to ask people to kind of give their CV and their background. I think that's something that people can look up. However, given what we're going to talk about and kind of the diversity of your career, I actually think it would be helpful to maybe get the 60-second overview on what you've done. Because you've been a CMO, you've been an agency CEO, you've been part of transforming some pretty major brands, as well as kind of proving yourself as a creative visionary. So give us like the 60-second cliff notes of your career to date.
Sure. I'm an agency guy. I started in agency world. Sony PlayStation helped build that brand in the 90s. Moved to a small boutique agency called Fallon, did Sony Balls, Cadbury Gorilla, a few other big campaigns that became quite well known. And then moved to Asia and wanted to see the world. My wife and I went for an adventure, had 2 kids en route, and gained a load of insight into how the world works outside of London, which has served me really well in global roles, working with Nike, working currently with Brompton.
Amazing. So can you give people a quick state of the union of the Brompton business and brand? Because I think I didn't even realize the scale that you all are at right now.
Yeah. Well, Brompton is 50 years old. It's a folding bicycle. It is handcrafted in London, in Greenford. We have about 1,000 people on the payroll. We are in 50 countries around the world. Our biggest market is China. We have the UK and Germany, also very strong in Europe. And we're growing very fast in Japan and Korea. And the US as well is another growth market for us. So right now, 50 years old, we've sold 1.2 million bikes so far. It's taken us, quite a long time to get to that first million. We're now working on how we can get to the next million a whole lot quicker.
So I, and probably a lot of people here, think of Brompton as kind of a quintessential British brand. But obviously you've had success scaling into other markets. How have you gone about kind of understanding and either trying to change or doubling down on how the brand is seen differently in different markets and different cultures?
Well, Brompton it's a brand which was founded by an engineer, and to be honest, it's been run by engineers for 48 years. Only in the last couple of years has marketing really had a seat at the table. So it's grown organically all over the world, and in China, for instance, it's very much a lifestyle accessory, whereas in London, it's a commuter brand. It's for people to get from A to B in the quickest possible time. So 2 very different use cases and different variants of those across other markets. So it's been very fragmented, and we are now in the process of trying to find, where we have found, we think, a really good platform which unites all of the use cases, a single, universal, recognizable truth that anyone, anywhere can relate to, that will connect them with Brompton and the benefits of owning a Brompton, i.e. helping you to navigate your city better and also to understand your city better and see it with fresh eyes, because a Brompton can help you get places that other modes of transport can't. So it's been a brilliant process. We've spoken to customers all over the world. We've had some really good conversations with internal stakeholders, with industry experts, done a lot of listening, and we've really found this sweet spot, which we're launching into the market at the end of this month.
I definitely want to drill down on how you kind of went about finding that new positioning. I know, unfortunately, we can't announce it here today unless you want to, but we can talk a little bit about the process, and I think there's a lot of people that would be curious to hear and are faced with a similar challenge of a global brand that needs to be locally relevant. So how do you fix that together? But I want to ask you a question that's not on the script, because when you said a company founded by engineers only recently kind of started to put some focus on marketing, you know, before starting Rival, I was CMO of a fintech business. And in that world, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, B2B, technology, financial services, categories that have a lot of businesses that are not necessarily marketing-led, that are product and engineering-led. How has that been kind of stepping into, because you think of Nike and kind of some of the places that you've been before, very brand and marketing-led. How has it been for you, and how have you approached the challenge of building a marketing practice in a business that's not necessarily oriented towards marketing?
Well, I think ultimately you have to be the voice of the customer as the marketing lead, and the customer's voice has become more and more relevant to the leadership over the course of time as we've grown, as we've sold 1 million bikes. You know, everyone now understands that we need to keep talking to those existing customers, a lot of whom bought the bike because it's an engineering icon, it's a design icon. But those people are getting older now. We've got to bring a new generation into the brand. And the way to do that has to be listening to the needs and wants of people, which are different from the previous generation. So having that level of understanding going into our communities, and we're very lucky to have really strong, passionate communities around the brand all over the world, understanding what it is that they love about Brompton. Our word of mouth referrals are off the charts. We get so much business through that alone. That's been the most valuable thing that I've done in the 9 months I've been at the business. Listening and synthesizing that information that's come out of those conversations, and then sharing that back to the leadership and the board, and presenting a case for a brand overhaul, a new way of talking about the brand, which is less focused on the product and the features of the product, and more focused on the benefits of the product, i.e. the life enhancements that owning a Brompton can provide. Health and wellness, mental wellness as well as physical, as well as getting around your city in a far more efficient way and meeting new people and seeing new places.
It is amazing, you know, having done about 150 of these kind of CMO interviews, whether it's on a stage or much more often on our podcast at Rival, how often, you know, I think of Charlotte from Bloom and Wild, who I interviewed yesterday, and I said this at the end of her interview, but it's amazing how often these CMOs that are behind some of the most successful challenger brands, or these big incumbent brands that are innovating effectively, they talk about how they view their role not just in, you know, the advertising and the marketing to the consumer, but actually making the business more customer-centric. And I actually think that, you know, when you think of businesses that aren't necessarily marketing-led or marketing-oriented, starting with what is the role of marketing, what is the definition of marketing within these organizations is probably the place to start.
Yeah, it is. It is, and understanding the customer mindset and the role that you can play in people's lives and the way in which you can give them a new angle on life. I mean, it's something that, you know, I was listening to the Havas presentation this morning on meaningful brands. It's now something that people want more than ever because of all the chaos going on elsewhere in their worlds. They want to be able to control their lives in a way that perhaps they hadn't previously because they trusted institutions and other entities to contribute. But that trust is now eroded. And so Brompton gives you freedom. It's a shortcut and a cheat code. This morning I was traveling to this, and the district line stopped working. You know, they said the line is suspended. You just don't have to worry when you've got a Brompton. You just off you skip, and on you go, and you can be there in minutes. It's just a wonderful co-pilot that you can have alongside you. Super portable. You can take it anywhere.
So I mentioned, you know, we only met 10 minutes ago, and I mentioned when we were getting mic'd up that one of the things that was on my mind coming over here was how much your category has changed in the last 5 years, especially in London, with the rise of Lime bikes, on-demand cycle hire, et cetera. Yeah. And you said that might actually be an interesting thing to touch on quickly. I
think it is. I think it's brilliant in the main. I think Lime bikes have brought cycling to a whole new raft of people who probably wouldn't have considered it. And, you know, old and young. It's amazing who you see on a Lime bike these days. And we see it as an opportunity because once people understand the benefits of cycling, the joy of cycling, chances are they're going to go on and perhaps buy a bike. And that gives us an opportunity to reach an audience that perhaps we wouldn't have reached otherwise. So we're generally all for it. I mean, of course, there are some downsides around the way in which the bikes are sometimes treated, which is a bit of an eyesore sometimes. But apart from that, you know, we're pretty cool with it.
Cool. All right, so let's come back to the conversation around the new positioning, the new platform for Brompton. So how have you gone about? Because I guess there's two parts. There's one, figuring out what it is, and the whole globally consistent in a way. Let me know if you disagree with that. But also locally relevant in all these different cultures and all these different markets where it can and should mean something to different people.
Yeah.
But then there's also taking a brand that is kind of this icon. You know, think of the whole Jaguar rebrand type thing. You know, you got to make sure that you're not kind of like losing or messing up the equity that's already there.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that process?
Well, I think you're right, but I think every good brand has one foot in the past and one foot in the future. We must be careful not to position ourselves as a classic bike. I think there is a niche audience who want that, but there is a future which is electric. Brompton's electric credentials are still being cemented, I think it's fair to say. We have a new electric offering coming out very soon, which I'm very excited about. But we need to present the brand in a fresh way in order to attract that fresh audience and people, I think especially, who are increasingly looking for an electric solution. So that's been really exciting. Working really closely with the product development team as well, and just seeing what's coming through the pipeline, which is phenomenal. I mean, that's the most exciting thing. The beauty of Brompton is, I think the founder was an ingenious inventor, and that is in the DNA of the business. So a lot of the people who are attracted to Brompton now come from companies like Dyson, for instance, which are also renowned for their ingenuity. So we have these incredible design minds inside the organization, and it's a dream to be able to work with them kind of upstream and start to sort of think about how the next 10 years of the brand is going to look. You know, we talk about a purpose of creating urban freedom for happier lives. So we don't talk about being a bike. We generally want to help cities become better places to live and just provide a little bit more joy in people's lives. And you know, I don't think that's lacking in credibility. People do talk in research about how they get great joy from riding our bikes. So that's the ultimate aim. And I've said to my partner at the office, we could invent a hoverboard. That could be in 10 or 15 years' time. That could be a Brompton thing. There's no reason why we can't do that because we've got that skill and ingenuity within our people.
Amazing. I know we have 2 questions from the audience, so should we go there?
A couple of questions coming in. Let's start with this one. How do you keep relevant and desirable in the Chinese market? The concept must have been largely copied by now.
That is a very pertinent point. It has. It's been copied left, right, and centre. But I think in China, the world has changed. I mean, every time I go there, I'm just amazed at how much the country has advanced in 6 months, every 6 months. I remember going there with Nike in 2018. It was polluted, and the transport systems didn't work. Now, everything flows, the skies are clear, electric cars on the road, mostly Chinese cars. Chinese audiences want the best now. They're not looking for so much the cheap sort of knockoff alternatives. They want the original. They want the brand that has got a story behind it and also that has got credibility in their social circles. And that's why Brompton currently is still very strong in China. And we're opening stores in that country at the moment at a rate that we aren't doing anywhere else in the world. So we foresee a very long and prosperous future in that market.
Great, thanks very much. This other question's come in from Callum Quinn. It says, thinking specifically about e-bikes, how do you maintain a consistent brand positioning amidst a fractured global regulatory environment?
That is another very good question. Again, I think it's about being incredibly robust in your product development. We test everything, every component, way beyond the industry standards. So we have a research and development of space at our factory that puts everything through these incredible trials. So when we go to market, and we take longer to come to market than most brands in our category, we are very, very sure of the quality of every piece of our product. Batteries is the thing with electric bikes at the moment that are causing the biggest concern. So we've been very, very careful to purchase our batteries from very, very credible suppliers, less so in the East and more in the West, where the product is of a far better, more reliable quality.
Great. Well, thank you very much, guys. I think we're pretty much at time there. But it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much to Chris Willingham from Brompton Bicycle and Eric Fulwiler from Rival. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Ladies and gents.